In this episode, I review the recent Blu-ray release of The Great Gatsby, which was released by IMPRINT Films. The film came out in 1949. It was directed by Elliott Nugent. It was based on the classic book, of course, by F.Scott Fitzgerald. The screenplay was by Owen Davis and Cyril Hume. It starred Alan Ladd, Betty Field, and MacDonald Carey. I will also be discussing whether this is a film noir or not. I'll compare it to the later versions of the book, which was released in 1974, and the one from 2013, as well as comparing it to the book itself. So, stick around. Welcome to Robert Bellissimo at the Movies. This is a YouTube video podcast where we explore storytelling on film, as well as interviews with industry professionals who work in film, television, theater, among other areas of the arts. For those of you who have not seen this film, I will read the little plot synopsis on the back. Travel back in time to the Roaring 20s, a time of flappers, bootlegging, Art Deco architecture, and jazz music as Jay Gatsby works his way from poor fisherman to extravagant millionaire. This is a fantastic release from IMPRINT Films, as always, and anyone who loves the book needs this release because it's got some great special features, which I'll get into here. Let's just take a look. 1080p high-definition presentation of a 2022 4K scan from the original camera negative. Audio commentary by professor and film scholar Jason A. Nye, which was done just this year. Alan Ladd, The True Quiet Man, documentary which was released in 1999, which is just under an hour. Professor Sarah Churchwell on The Great Gatsby, which was done this year. That's about 22 minutes, I believe. Film critic / writer Christina Newland on The Great Gatsby. That was also done this year, and that featurette is under 20 minutes. And an onstage interview with Alan Ladd's son, David Ladd, conducted by Alan K. Rohde. That is between 20-25 minutes long. So there's a lot of special features. And although what I like so much about this release is that no one is trying to say that this is a great film or a classic film. I mean, particularly in the features, Sarah Churchwell, the professor, talks about the fact that there are certain things, a lot of things in the book that you just really maybe can't adapt. I read the book about 10 years ago, so it's certainly not fresh in my mind. But she said some really interesting things about that, which I'll get into. But that really, to me, is if you love the book, this is something to get just to see how the filmmakers adapted it at the time and why they adapted it the way it was. I mean, Hollywood had strict censorship, so they could only really go so far with it. Again, there's the comparisons. They touch on some comparisons with the 74 version and the 2013 version, which I'll get into. One thing that I found really interesting was Alan K. Rohde, strongly suggests when he interviewed his son David Ladd that this is people can put this on a noir list. This is sort of one of those noir or nots, and I never really thought of The Great Gatsby as a film noir. And I thought to myself, when he said that, I thought, well, what makes it a film noir? And I mean, for one thing, just in terms of the cast, I mean, you have Alan Ladd, who was in This Gun for Hire and The Black Dahlia and some other film noir movies. We have him as our lead. They use the same DOP cinematographer who did the cinematography for Double Indemnity. He would later go on to do Sunset Boulevard as well. So it has that film noir style to it, the shooting style. And yeah, when you think about it, some of the themes in it are film noir. I mean, it's certainly explores a lot of themes. I mean, when I say that, I mean the book. And this sort of really centers on, a moral tale. It shows it takes away the mystery of the fact that, he was a bootlegger, and the mystery. I mean, they're very upfront right away that Jay Gatsby is a criminal. And, he is Jay Gatsby is someone who is very ambitious, and he will do anything to become successful, and which include crime, which is something you saw in so many film noir movies, is that doing anything to, here we are, World War II, even though the book is in the 1920s, it really is so universal. I think that's why it's such a classic, to this day, because it has so many universal themes, and particularly after the World War II, going into this consumerism era, the fact that Jay Gatsby is someone who needs all this recognition and success, and he was someone who was poor, that is a very film noir thing. And we have our crime as well, we have Jay Gatsby is a criminal, and then the character Shelley Winters plays Myrtle Wilson, who gets hit by a car by Daisy Buchanan, so we have that crime aspect, and then we have Jay Gatsby getting killed by Wilson, so it has a crime story to it, and of course dealing with morals, so it has a number of film noir tropes to it. However, to me, it's a very sanitized version of a film noir. I mean, all the characters, they basically make it so that even though these people are maybe acting in bad ways, that they're all good people underneath. I mean, and that certainly is not in the book, but every character changes for the better. And, again, the featurettes are great because Sarah Churchwell, professor, talks about how the book, F.Scott Fitzgerald didn't write in such a direct way. I mean, it's very complicated and layered, and he let the audience sort of make up their own interpretations about things. And here, everything is just so explicit, is so direct. For example, Jay Gatsby, he became a criminal to get to where he was. He lied about his past, that he was poor. He basically, in the end, learned, as he says, once Daisy hits Myrtle with the car, and he says, "Oh, you know what? I'm gonna say I did it." And he has this speech right before he's killed to Nick, where he's beside the pool, where he's like, "You know what? I'm gonna go to jail, and I'm gonna pay for what I did, and I've learned my lesson, and I've been acting in ways that I shouldn't have been. I'm trying to be someone I'm not, and hopefully these kids like me won't do this." And then boom, he gets shot. In really great film noirs, you never saw, you may have seen characters learn something, and like something like Where the Sidewalk Ends, at the very end, he learns the errors of his ways. But this to me is a much more sanitized, safer version, whereas even Where the Sidewalk Ends has a rougher feel to it, and he learns the errors of his ways. And it also reminded me of film noir because it starts at the he's a doomed protagonist, doomed from the beginning, doomed from the end, because it starts with Nick and Jordan going to visit his grave years later, and it's got the gravestone, it's got that biblical quote on it, and it's like, if only he had just learned his lesson. And so a lot of film noirs, started at the end in the flashback, so we already know that he's dead, and so he's doomed right from the beginning, and he's doomed right at the end. And so and so they even apparently tried to market it as a thriller. But like I said, everybody changes for the better rather easily. Tom Buchanan, who's married to Daisy, when Wilson approaches him and accuses him of being the one who drove the car that killed his wife, he says, no, it was Tom, knowing he says, no, it was Jay, knowing that Wilson had a gun and is going to go now kill him. And Daisy says to Tom, no, how could you have done that? You have to call him and stop him. And he does, right? So he learns the errors of his ways. He learns that he's taking this too far and that he's being violent. Another thing with Tom that's in the book and in the other two film adaptations, is that he's a massive racist. He's a white supremacist, and he's awful. And here he's mean and he's cold, but they do not make him as bad as he comes across in the book and in the other films. And he certainly doesn't learn his lesson at all in any kind of wrongdoing in the book or in the other films. Even Daisy, I suppose, she's certainly not a femme fatale. I suppose in a way she's marrying someone. She married Tom because of what he had, and she never loved him, and things like that. And even in the end, she doesn't try to, protect Jay when Jay says, "Oh, I'll say that I was driving the car, so you don't have to go to jail." She was gonna go along with it to save herself and let him go to jail. So it has a somewhat femme fatale trope, but not really, because her character. This is another thing that really popped out in the book, is that F. Scott Fitzgerald was also getting at the fact that women were marginalized, and they didn't have much opportunities because of the way the world was designed, and it was run by men. And so she has that line, which I'm glad they have here, where she's talking about her daughter. It's like, well, the best that could, she says something along the lines of, the best that could happen, and what she hopes is that at least she'll be beautiful and a fool. And she's upset when she says that, meaning that she can see she's beautiful, Daisy, but she's not a fool. So she can see how she is being treated unfairly, how Tom is cheating on her, and that he can get away with anything because of his power, and how he abuses his power, and that she can't do anything about it because she's a woman and she just has to take it. So she's not a fool because she could see all those things, but she hopes that her daughter will be beautiful to get all these things, but not be wise enough to see that she's getting screwed, and that this is her lot in life is not fair, and to be put in her place. But at least if she's beautiful, she'll have the security. So they included that here, and you see her getting upset when she says it. So not really a femme fatale. The femme fatales are often very independent, and sometimes it was empathetic towards their position, and sometimes not. But she's certainly not that bad. She's a complicated character, and she's torn between these two men, and so no. But again, not every film noir needs a femme fatale, and so all of these things that are rather done in a very sanitized, very safe way. They really spoon feed everything to the audience. They make it very easy to understand, and the audience doesn't have to go to it and fill in the blanks about certain things about the characters. And again, what was really disappointing is the fact that they eliminate the mystery of Gatsby, and the fact that he was this guy throwing these parties and no one knew where he came from, who he was, what he did, how he got rich. And of course, because it's told from Nick's point of view in the book and in the other film adaptations, here it's not, is that he's seeing him, looking out on the other, across the bay at this green light. And people are like, why does this guy, no one knows him, he doesn't even show up at the parties, why? And so they eliminate that mystery. You do see at the party early on, no one knows who he is, but we've already seen him in like a gang war early in the film. They're making it very clear he's a gangster and he's a bootlegger, whereas in the other films and in the book, these things really come later, right? So, which was disappointing to me. Both Christina Newland and Sarah Churchwell talk, they give great behind the scenes facts, and trivia was that Alan Ladd loved this book and he really wanted to do it, and Paramount owned the rights to it, because I did not know this, that there is a silent film version that came out in the 1920s, and so they owned the rights of the book. And Alan Ladd was pushing and pushing for it, and they kept saying, just do this movie and then we'll do that. And he got so sick of it that he said, you know what, put me on suspension. I'm not going to do anything else until you make The Great Gatsby. And at this point, the book was not the literary classic that it is now, or not long after this. But he loved the book and he could identify with it. He was a guy who who had come from the streets and had a real need for recognition. Actually, in the documentary, The True Quiet Man, someone who wrote a biography on him talks about that he could really identify with Jay, and he was someone from the streets who worked his way up and had a real need for recognition, and that, and he was like a loner, a lone man, an outsider, Jay Gatsby. And so, Alan Ladd felt that he felt the same way. And his son actually said, David Ladd, he said that it was actually a family favorite around the house was The Great Gatsby. And not many people, I had never even heard of the 49 version. I knew the 74 one and I knew the 2013 one. I didn't know about the silent one. I did not know about this. So, Imprint putting this out is so great because, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think it's ever even been out on DVD before or any other Blu-ray, or I'm not sure about VHS. I Googled it. I couldn't find anything. If anyone knows that it was released in the past, comment below and let me know. But this is the first release I've heard of it that we have on Blu-ray. And again, it's a beautiful print. But another thing was, of course, that's in the book is that he met this guy on a boat that he warned about this coming storm. And the guy was so appreciative that he took him under his wing and hired him to work on the boat. And he was this rich man, and he taught him that, man, you got to have money, you got to have success. And he really believed this, and he left him a lot of money after he died, which his mistress blocked and took away from him. And here in the movie, they have that, but they also have this character, like his wife, on the boat. Jay, both of them have this like immediate attraction. And the guy that he worked for looks up at him, Dan Cody's the character. He notices the attraction immediately, and he's like, oh yeah, well, you can't have her because you don't have the money. and I just thought, okay, I can understand if you're a rich older guy with a young trophy wife, like maybe on some level, this person is likely with you because you have all this money. But the fact that there wouldn't be some hope or feeling or denial or something that maybe this really young woman does love you, even if that's wishful thinking, I just thought, how could he have been so like, yes, I see you love my wife, and that not necessarily love, but I can see you're lusting after my wife and she's lusting after you. But hey, no big deal. I know you can't do anything about it because I'm the one with money. Why would you keep someone on a boat and leave him money when there's this attraction between these two people, your wife and this guy? I just thought, how could he be so okay with it? To me, it made no. I just thought that's really far-fetched. I didn't like that. I didn't like that they went there with the story, but they did, and that's where it went. And so, but it's enjoyable, it's good. It's not a great film. None of the versions of the films are great. Sarah Churchwell talks about the fact that a lot of the book is, even though it centers around themes like the American dream and people re-examining what that all means, and we have social class status, and we have things about characters who are racist, and issues, of course, with gender and stuff. But she was saying really it's about how powerful the imagination is, that Jay Gatsby is this guy who really lives in his head. And we all have this happens to everybody, is that when we really want something, what we imagine about it seems and feels so much greater than when we actually have it. And he believes he can recreate everything. And this is part of the downfall with Daisy, is that he couldn't stand the fact that she was saying that she did at love Tom, or at one point love Tom. It was like, no, you only loved me, right? In the confrontation that happens later. And so she was talking about how that's really unfilmable because it's so much about his imagination and the power of the imagination, and how reality is never as satisfying as what we imagine. He obsesses over Daisy for so many years, and he talks about how she was so perfect, and again, this all exists in his head. And so one thing that I liked about the 74 version was there was more interaction between Redford and Mia Farrow. Mia Farrow playing Daisy and Redford playing Jay. I like the scene where he confronts her about the fact that she married Tom. You know, he's like, how could you have married? Why didn't you just wait for me? And he goes, and she says, because, and she cries. She goes, you know, rich girls don't marry poor boys. I thought that was such a strong scene. And there's another scene again. He's trying to recreate the past where he puts his old army suit on and they're dancing together. You know, again, they all capture something really great. In terms of casting, I did think Alan Ladd was the best because he had a natural aloofness and natural charm to him. And he also came from the streets. I know his son said that too, you know, as much as David was saying, as much as he loves Robert Redford, and I do too, he's doesn't have a rough quality about him. He didn't come from the streets. Not that you have to literally come from the streets to play someone who maybe seems like they come from the streets or had a rough upbringing. But Redford doesn't have that quality, and so he was rather genteel. Even though it had some scenes I really liked, and I mean he's good in it, but he just didn't quite have the necessary qualities of Jay. I felt I liked DiCaprio more, particularly the fact that, you know, he's trying to pose as an aristocrat, and so everything in his manners, everything is pretentious and a little over the top on purpose. And I thought that worked really well. He also had brought a real intensity to it. The great scene he has with Tom later on, where Tom's, you know, picks at some of his insecurities and he tells him to shut up and he almost punches him. And it's really, really intense. My problem with the Baz Luhrmann film is that his filmmaking style to me is so pretentious, and he's trying to razzle dazzle you so much with his visuals. In a way, the energy of those great 1920 parties were fantastic, I thought, because it really felt like you were there in those parties. I thought the energy was fantastic. But the CGI and I just felt like he's shoving every single emotion down your throat. Even when Jay Gatsby gets shot at the end, and, you know, it's like slow motion as he goes underneath the pool, and he cuts to a POV shot of the camera going backwards as he's looking over the bay, and now he'll never look at Daisy again, and it's all so sad, and it's just like, oh my God, man, give the audience some room to breathe. Let them go to this film, you know, let them, you know, what I like about the 74 one and this one as well, the 49, is that it's just blunt. The murders are just bleak and blunt and sad, and that's it. You know, and you know, I just thought it was so, he's just I mean, it's obviously everything is a manipulation in film to an extent, but how far one can stretch it is another thing. And Luhrmann is just, you know, my feeling was he's trying to impress the audience so much, and I just thought the CGI, I hated the way it looked. I mean, I just thought, this does not look right. I mean, Christina Newland said it just felt like a 21st century movie pretending to be the 20s. I mean, he's using rap music and hip hop. I just thought, what are you doing, man? This is not good. I mean, the party scenes here are also not great. It looks like the most low-key party ever. And, you know, the 20s, this is the jazz age, this is during Prohibition, when booze was cheaper, and they really didn't put enough money into it. And again, they were really doing it because Alan Ladd wanted to. It's not as though the studio was excited about it. And so it's a shame, but there is actually a photo inside. I mean, the photo looks really great. I mean, as we see here, this photo of the parties, and there's Jay, you know, all alone there. And it's such a great photo, but really the parties just didn't have much energy. It seemed like a pretty conservative, low-key function, you know. But again, they all have something. I mean, I think the best thing going for this one is the Alan Ladd, because I did think, you know, his sort of, I mean, some people are split. They mentioned in the special features that some people are split on him. You know, some people think he was wooden. I didn't think so. I thought, again, the aloofness and still being charming and perhaps trying to act like an aristocrat is where you can interpret it as that's why he's wooden, because he's trying to be something he's not, and it doesn't look good. Like, it just doesn't come naturally, and so it's rather artificial. Whereas with DiCaprio, it's very flamboyant, it's very pretentious, and so Alan just went another way with it. Whereas with Redford, he's just very sort of one note throughout the film. I mean, I didn't feel much range from him. Differing opinions again about, who was great as Daisy. I mean, you see that Christina Newland says that she thought that the Betty Field was quite good as Daisy because she had a natural kind of upper class quality. Whereas the professor, Sarah Churchwell, was like, well, she's the total opposite of how f.scott Fitzgerald visualized this character. But at the same time, as she says, it's not just the character is really because it exists so much in his head and in his feelings. It's of these strong suggestions of how he sees these people as opposed to seeing someone embodied. And so, how every audience member, when they see that whoever plays Daisy is going to have their own feelings about this character, and no one can live up to perfection. And in the book, I looked up. There's a chapter. I mean, he doesn't just say that, oh, she's so gorgeous. I mean, there was so many things about her personality that he loved, and that it wasn't just about beauty, and he says that as well. And so, but again, it's this look at someone from his eyes who are perfect, and so we as the audience can see that he feels that way, but we have to also get on that side, on his side, and so we have to feel the same way as him in order for that to work. And again, everybody is going to have so many different points of views, and so we lose that feeling as a result. At the time, they wanted Gene Tierney, and I think that would have worked pretty well. It's a shame that they didn't go with her, but I think because especially then, like, the actors were so glamorous. I know that Christina Newland talked about this, 1940s Hollywood, like a lot of the women were so glamorous looking that we could have, maybe got to very, very close to that, at least in terms of looks and beauty. Not that there hasn't always been beautiful women in Hollywood, but there's a certain depth and range that Gene Tierney had, and like flawless beauty that could have potentially worked. But again, that's so hard because no one is perfect, and my version of who's perfect is going to be different than you watching this right now, and someone else. But again, you see various opinions. Christina Newland felt that she was good in it, and Sarah Churchwell not feeling quite so enthusiastic about it. I actually thought Mia Farrow was, from what we've seen, I thought she was the best at it because she's very believable as being like upper class. She had this sense of innocence and high energy about her, and this adorable quality to her. She has the range and the depth, I felt as well. And so, I mean, again, everybody, even Betty Field, she has a certain quirkiness to her, a certain sense of humor to her that is really appealing. And, you have Carey Mulligan, who's such a good actor. I actually really love her as an actor. She was quite good, but for me, it was what really came through is the depth that she could bring to it, the depth of feeling and how torn she was towards the end between these two men. And, again, in the features, they point out, Sarah Churchwell points out that not only did you have to believe that Jay was obsessed with her and loved her, but also that Tom, who's like this, again, meant to be this really sexy, one of the richest men, would also want to marry her, right? So it's like everyone loves this woman. These guys who have it all and are handsome love this woman as well, right? So again, it's like these impossible standards that really would only really work in a book. Because writing about it and reading it, we'll all have our own visuals of the perfect woman, in our minds, right? And so once we see it everyone's gonna feel differently. So again, perhaps it's not totally filmable, but who knows? Maybe one day we'll get another, movie that is going to be, that's going to nail it. But I don't know. I think I'd have to agree with Sarah Churchwell that is possibly unfilmable. But let's just take a little closer look at the front and back here. If you just, people want to pause it and take a screenshot. I know I read out all the features, but there they are. Again, the artwork, they always do perfect color, gold. Why not? Of course. I love this. Alan Ladd. The documentary as well, really, really good on him, about his rise to fame and, his struggles with alcohol, and all of his kids went into the industry and were all really, really successful. His son was an actor as well, really successful child actor. I know I already showed this. He actually fell in love with his agent and married her. So that's pretty interesting. I don't know many actors who married their agents. So yeah, that's a really great hour special feature. And I'll just show the disc with the sticker on it. But again, I would say again, it's like a sanitized noir. I mean, they certainly, like they said in the features, were going for a thriller, which they would have called it at the time, crime thriller. Today we call it noir. They certainly were going for that. But again, it's rather sanitized. So I wouldn't quite say it's film noir. That's a tough one. I would say it's really up to you. To me, not really. It's just done. It's too safe. It's done. I'm not saying the book is too safe, but the film is done. It's too light, too moralistic, too feeding the audience everything and making everything so easy, and the characters changing so easily. So I would say certainly not. But again, if you love the book, you really got to have this just to see how the filmmakers try to adapt it and the limitations at the time with the production code and all kinds of things and things like that. So again, the features are great because it really goes in depth about the making of this, and like I said, touching on things about the other versions and how it's perhaps not really filmable. But this is a treasure if you love the book and are curious to see how it was done on film, at least in this version. So thank you, Imprint Films and Via Vision, for sending me a copy. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. I want to thank all of my members on Patreon. If you're interested in becoming a member of my Patreon, head over to the link patreon.com/Robert Bellissimo at the movies for full details. You can also leave a donation directly to my YouTube channel by pressing the thanks link, which you will find just below the video frame, right beside the like and dislike links. Just click the thanks link, and from there, you can leave a donation if you choose to. And lastly, if this is your first time here, please consider subscribing to my YouTube channel. It is absolutely free to do so. By pressing the Robert Bellissimo at the Movies logo, you will see it floating above my head in the top left corner to your top left. In just a second, just click on that. And then click the bell in order to get a notification every time I release one of my new episodes. Thank you so much, everyone. I will see you in the next episode.